A lot of people were very recently reminded of a tragedy that occurred almost 9 years ago. My next guest, Roger Kenis, was there. He's a survivor. He's a U.S. Marine, and he's been locked in a legal battle since then. Roger, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Can't complain. Nobody would listen anyways.
We're all here to listen, man. And what's interesting about this is the funny thing is now that you and I have been in communication just for the past few days. Everybody saw that Tucker Carlson interviewed Ian Carroll, and this has kind of reinvigorated interest in this Route 91 Harvest Festival shooting. You were at the concert, right?
Yes, sir. I was there with my girlfriend. It was actually my first concert. Um, like you said, I'm a former Marine. I served 10 years, 3 combat tours in Iraq. I had a supply logistics background, but I was kind of like the jack of all trades, whatever you needed me to do. But I also served in a military police unit. I was a squad leader, team leader, and I had some specialty training in the Marine Corps for counterintelligence, human intelligence activities. So basically, I was being trained for terrorism, espionage, sabotage, subversion cases,
Wow.
spycraft type stuff. I was also trained as an interrogator. Now, I left about 2 weeks before I was supposed to graduate, but there were some other reasons behind it on me being sent to Japan after my third back-to-back deployment. And not, I just had a daughter, and I just come home from my last tour back-to-back. And so when I came home, my daughter was born like 4 days later. I was home for less than a month, and they sent me to Virginia for 4 months. And then they were trying to send me on orders to Japan for 3 years without my family, and I said no. And
Ooh.
so I left what I was doing, but I pretty much was near graduation. I was 2 weeks away. I'd done all the work. It was 4 months, you know, 15-hour days, 7 days a week, working my butt off, and went through the training. I didn't get to implement it real world, but I received full on training, and we cover things on terrorism, espionage, and those kind of organizations and tactics, but criminal organizational tactics as well, and sabotage, subversion, mostly geared toward the military. But I was able to use the skills that I was taught in relation to this case. But I had been out of the Marine Corps since 2013. Uh, my girlfriend decided to get tickets for this concert at the time. And to be honest with you, I had a bad gut feeling going, and I said something to her cousin or her aunt, and but I wasn't going to let my girlfriend go to Vegas for 4 days without me, and I was supposed to drive. So I ended up driving us there. And to be honest with you, I kind of chalked it up to my PTSD. I was already 100% disabled from combat activities and military service. And so I'd been going through therapy. I'd been out of therapy for about 2 years at that point, but I was kind of trying to find myself again, coming home from combat and figure out what I was going to do with the rest of my life. And we went to this concert and everything was great until it wasn't. And I'm sure other people will tell you, it was a great time, and everybody was friendly, just dancing, having a great time, having some drinks, and just watching the show. Um, where my case becomes unique is partially because of my training. I had been experienced of getting shot at quite a few times, unfortunately, in my career. Mostly mortars and direct fire, but we had some car bombs go off, and there was some gunfire at times throughout my 10 years and 3 tours overseas. But basically,
Let me just slow you down a second, Roger, because I don't mean to interrupt you, but we're almost 9 years out. There's going to be some people watching who don't even necessarily remember this. Like somebody who is 8 or 9 years old and is a teenager now, maybe they haven't even heard about this because the story has pretty much been wiped from the public memory, hasn't it?
yes. Other than my now 17-year-old daughter, who was about 8, 9 years old at the time,
Wow.
unfortunately, this is not just affected myself, but my family, my relationship with my daughter. She was eight going on 9 at the time that this happened. And, imagine getting a call that your dad's been shot at, and, I called my family. I'm in California, and but all my family's back home in Florida, other than my daughter. And so after the military, I stayed to be close to her. But having to call back to San Diego, call to my family, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the morning for them, and say, "Hey, I'm okay, just FYI, but there's going to be some major news coming out," and definitely not a call you ever expect to make,
No.
and it was a very unfortunate night, and I kind of want to just touch on this one piece because when the shooting first started happening, I was down in front of the disabled seating, basically catty corner from Mandalay Bay, and I was there with my girlfriend, and we had moved down out of the disabled seating, kind of up front a little bit, but we're still on the left side barricade because they had like a center aisle of gates going all the way down. And so we're on the left hand side of the stage. And I didn't know it at the time. And I honestly didn't know it until we got back here to San Diego and I started looking through all of our videos. But my girlfriend, and, let me stop for a second because I've been in a couple articles, Rolling Stone, a documentary called Money Machine. I've done some other articles with news organizations, but not one of them will tell the public this. My girlfriend inadvertently filmed while she was filming the concert that the 32-135 window was shot out 16 minutes before the current police time narrative. So at 9:49 p.m., he first shot out the window. He wasn't shooting into the crowd yet, but he shot out that window. And I want to touch on something because I'm going to give you some facts that the public does not know, including the fact that the narrative has been that Stephen Paddock used a hammer to smash out the windows. That is not correct, and MGM admitted it during my case.
Well,
They
see,
admitted that he
let
shot
me
out.
slow you down a second because I know you've been in this for years and you know so much about it, but there's a lot to this. So that you've just dropped a bomb on us that I want to talk about. And unfortunately, John Cullen, who I'm sure you're aware of, have you ever been on John Cullen's show?
I have not, but I think I've probably had some bickering or bantering back and forth with
Yeah,
him
because your
early
name
on.
has come up. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And you
Yes,
were
sir.
in the Ramsey Dennison. You mentioned Money Machine. That was Ramsey made that, right? So you've
Yes.
definitely been through the ringer on this whole thing. But so the police body camera footage that we've seen from them inside the room that's attributed to Stephen Paddock, the window's not broken when they get there after Paddock is dead. So that's something we've got to talk
Let,
about.
let me correct you on that. That video, I saw the original video before it was edited.
Huh.
That video that is currently up is edited, and it's very cleverly done. And I don't know exactly who did it, but they do come back and find the window is broken in that video. But it's been edited cleverly, hold out like, oh, the window's not broken out. That window was broken out. It was the first window shot out. And like I said, it was 16 minutes before he started shooting into the crowd. I believe he was shooting out a helicopter that was coming into view.
Shooting
And those
at a
helicopters,
helicopter.
yeah. And that helicopter ended up because there were, I think, Maverick. And a lot of this I'm going off my head from 9 years of a lot of information. But off the top of my head, there was Sundance and I think Maverick helicopters flying, doing the tourist route. Two of those helicopters, I believe, landed right behind Mandalay Bay shortly thereafter. I would like to talk to those pilots, first off. But you got to think that he had his van packed full of explosive material, tannerite, shooting exploding targets packed somewhere in that vicinity. Had that helicopter gone down on the main strip, there would have been possibly an explosion, possibly detonating his vehicle with more explosives. And then you got to think that he turned and shot at the tanks near the airport. So he could have funneled the crowd. You can't go left, you can't go right. Thankfully, neither one of them worked. I mean, he didn't have some technical dealings and knowings of, he didn't know if those tanks were full. He didn't know that a JP8 or jet fuel burn hotter. If you're shooting high on the tank, you don't know if it's full or half empty or what. I mean, thankfully, all those things worked out for us. But that is my observation from a tactical standpoint on why somebody would do what they did. And thankfully, neither one of them worked out.
So
like I said,
let me just slow you down because there's so much we could talk about with this whole story, and like I said, it is coming back now that Tucker and Ian had this whole conversation. And what's interesting here is you and I have never spoken before. We had a little bit of DM communication on X. I also want to remind people they can follow you there on X. You are at Kenis81. People can follow your X account. And you don't have like a podcast or a GoFundMe or a Substack or anything like that, do you?
no. To be honest with you, I tried to start a GoFundMe for some of the legal costs early on. It didn't gain any traction. To be honest, I've been kind of written off within the community as like, oh, he's just looking for attention or, whatever. That is, I assure you, not the case. And I really want to stress to you, there's some things that you guys need to know about MGM and their liability in this instance. MGM, like I said, that window was shot out 16 minutes before. I also want to give you information on the motive, and I fully back what I'm telling you, and I will back it with documents on why Stephen Paddock did this. And I'm going to give you information that they just have not gone over, and it all stems from his lawsuit. Stephen Paddock was involved in a lawsuit against the Cosmopolitan in 2011 for a slip and fall. He tore his hamstring. He sued him basically for 32 grand plus, potentially punitive damages and lawyers' fees, maybe 100 grand, maybe a bit more. I mean, that's chump change to him. I remind you, he had 2 houses that were still paid for. He had cars. He wasn't broke and destitute. He spent $1.6 million, according to his brother, the week that he did this. So the guy wasn't broke and destitute. He went out and bought $100,000 worth of guns and ammo. I mean, that's not this. This is the mind of somebody that goes and gambles. I mean, if you're going to kill yourself, think about this.
But wait a minute. Why did he shoot everybody over a $30,000 lawsuit? That doesn't make a lot of sense.
Let me explain a little bit. It was revenge. Now, he spent 4 years in court. They came back to him and said, basically, that he could not prove the cause of his damages. Basically, that he tore his hamstring there, or that he slipped and fell on water that was on the floor. Now, he hadn't bought guns since 2008. He had bought many guns in the past, but since 2008, he hadn't bought a gun. Now, December 16th, 2013, he wanted a jury trial. They forced him back into basically a bench trial where the judge decides, right? Well, a year later, on October 2nd, 2014, they rule against him. The following year, on the anniversary of when they forced him back into the bench trial, he went out and bought his first gun, a 9mm. Then, about 10 months later, on the next anniversary, October 2nd, he goes out and buys 2 more guns. He bought a shotgun and an AR-15. He kept buying guns throughout the year. He sent them on a wild goose chase because you gotta remember that his dad was on the FBI's most wanted list as a bank robber for 10 years. All right. He's basically saying, he's an accountant. This guy's not stupid. He knows numbers, he knows math, and he knows there's probably some money laundering going on, and he knows there's some corruption with his case and the casinos. He's not liking what's going on. They're cutting comps. They're, kind of reneging on the deal kind of thing. And basically, he turned around, kept buying guns throughout the year, but he booked over Lollapalooza at Blackstone Hotel. He never checked in there. He was leaving a clue, even though it's separate. The name is the same, Blackstone Hotel. Deutsche Bank was selling the Cosmopolitan to Blackstone during his case. They had already had the deal done. They were going to close. And 2 months after his lawsuit was closed out, they closed that deal. Now,
but wait a second. He shot everybody, like 500 people at a concert, and killed himself over a $30,000 lawsuit?
He wanted to leave them liable. this is the biggest thing he could do to leave them
Well,
liable.
let's put that aside for a minute because I want to talk about your
Okay.
case because I think again a lot of people this went out of their minds and they haven't thought about it for a long, long time. But what people might
Right.
not recall is that I think sometime around 2020 there was a pretty gigantic here look at that September 11th of all dates 2020 there was a settlement where something like $750 million was divided up among 400 and something, or I think 4,000, because there were family of victims who were involved in this settlement. But there was all this money that got divided up among a bunch of people. And here, $800 million
Yeah.
paid
Let me
out.
give you some details to that. And I want to point this out real quick to you. During my video that I said he shot out that window 16 minutes before, the song playing is by Jason Aldean, says it's the only way I know. He was leaving messages. The only way I know how to expose the corruption. He couldn't do it in court. They're cheating. It's rigged. The casinos are rigging cases with the court system there, and the cops are letting this shit go on. The money laundering that's been recently exposed. All this shit's been going on for quite a while. So he was like, basically, the only way I know how is to leave them liable for cheating me. Now, that's not an excuse. Much like the Unabomber Ted Kaczynski, he went around killing people and planting bombs. That's wrong. But it doesn't mean that his point on the internet being the downfall of society and technology and all this stuff didn't have a ring of truth to it and have some validity. Now, you just don't go killing people to prove your point. But you got to also consider the fact that he had lost a love life. His girlfriend, his sex drive's gone down. He's on medications. He's clearly pissed off and out of his mind, and he wants revenge. But yes, the settlement was $800 million.
Yeah.
$751 million was covered by Zurich, their insurance. There were actually about 26 insurers, and they basically all, I believe, paid out somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 million. Supposedly Zurich was the only insurance company that kind of balked at MGM. And it wasn't that they balked at making the payout, but MGM got greedy because they wanted more money for their lawyers' fees and for all the professional services of people coming in to help them basically try to muddy the water with propaganda to limit liability for them. You got to consider if MGM was absolutely liable, which I'm telling you they absolutely were. And by the way, I had a friend shot in a mass shooting on their property before back in 2007. Not at Mandalay Bay, but 2 miles away at New York Hotel. So they acted like, well, this has never happened before. That's bullshit.
Well,
3
I
years
remember
prior.
that.
Yeah, her name's Carrie Zaravica. A guy named Steven Zegrin, who died in prison after this, walked in and shot a bunch of people, 4 or 5 people, from an elevated position down on the casino floor in 2007 at New York Hotel. You can Google her name. It will come up. The guy died in prison. She sued them for lax security procedures. The guy walked around in June, July time frame in 100-degree heat between the casinos in a trench coat. And nobody thought that was suspicious.
So why?
He was just
You've obviously followed this super closely. Why was it ultimately determined that MGM was liable for this? Because they didn't have adequate security to keep the guys' guns out?
Well, for one, okay, MGM Resorts International has a no weapons policy. They've had multiple stabbings and other gun incidents in their hotel, in Mandalay Bay specifically. One just like 2 months before. They also had 2 different threats from ISIS in the months leading up to this. They had DHS threat warning of potential isolated terrorist attacks, blah, blah, blah. Mandalay Bay, MGM, and so I'm gonna tell you something that these guys are real slick. Their lawyers are slick. They're trying to win on procedural moves. They've tried to assert no evidence against themselves. But MGM, basically, when they hunkered down with their team, they started wiping their promotions of the festival. Now, they were trying to hide behind this DHS Safety Act, which was an act that was created after 9/11 to not penalize companies if their technology failed. All these metal detectors, weapons detection systems at the airport, that if one of them failed, that the corporation trying to, upgrade this technology was not going to be held liable. It would limit them to about $25 million in damages. And because MGM employed CSC, a security service at the festival grounds, they were trying to use that to negate their liability. The problem is MGM basically started wiping their promotions. And at the end of my case, I came back and showed that there was a flyer where Mandalay Bay and some of the other hotels owned by MGMs were all in a partnership with the festival. Mind you, it wasn't a lower subsidiary that they could hide behind that signed the festival permit. The festival permit was signed by a guy named Don Alves, a corporate production manager directly from the parent corporation of MGM. So they've been trying to hide behind Mandalay Bay because that's just one subsidiary they could write off in bankruptcy. But this goes directly to the parent corporation. They own 17 casinos there in Vegas? You're talking potential bankruptcy when you're talking this was potentially, the lawyers were looking at $6 to $7 billion potentially for this lawsuit. Instead, they whittled it down to $751 million covered by insurance, and they kicked in 49, and nobody was going to be the wiser. That is the flyer that I pulled back up. I didn't get that from MGM. I got it from a subsidiary that still had that in the way back machine, and I found it. Now, why that's important is Mandalay, I sued 5 different entities, the parent corporation, who I'm primarily holding responsible because they write the policies, rules, and regulations for all of their subsidiaries to follow, including security hiring practices and security protocols, right? So they were trying to say that my case, that I couldn't recover damages from Mandalay Bay because I wasn't on it.
We got to go back a second because this is what I want to get to, your case.
Yes.
So you did not participate in this $800 million settlement. You're one of the few people who refused the settlement. And you started your own separate case? Why was that? And what's different about your case? And how many people took your route versus how many people? Because one comment that came up in the Tucker Carlson, Ian Carroll interview was that none of the witnesses, none of the victims have spoken out. It's my impression that the overwhelming majority have been paid out and obviously are not allowed to say anything or they'll get sued into utter poverty, right?
Right. They used fear tactics to divide us, basically. I had gone to the lawyers, and I was telling them to fight for us. I was like, I have video. I'm giving them my background.
So you were in the case at first? You were involved in this? Is it a class action thing, or what is it?
It was a mass tort. It should have been broken up, honestly, if they really wanted to go after MGM and wear them down and get what they wanted out of it. They would have sued the shit out of them individually. Instead, they brought it and they rounded it up onto a mass tort. They were trying to get it in the federal court, and they were trying to get it excused under the DHS Safety Act. That didn't work, so they went to state court. They brought in cases, and basically everybody was lumped in one group. Now, I had found out at the time I was doing my homework. Judge Jennifer Tagliati was the 8th Judicial District Court judge. She was the Chief Justice at the time of the shooting. She retired from the bench just before she took over as a mediator in the settlement. Her best friend, Judge Linda Bell, who handled the settlement case and my case, appointed Judge Tagliati and another judge by the name of Louis Meisinger, who had ties to Disney. He really had nothing to do with it, but he was out of California. Those were the 2 mediators. Well, what they didn't tell all the families is that Judge Tagliati's father was the VP of Safety, Surveillance, and Security at Mandalay Bay at the time of the shooting.
Wow.
He's also a former retired FBI agent, to the best of my knowledge.
Wow.
Yeah. The public has not been told that either. Now, Judge Tagliati, if you really think about it, she might want to protect her father because there's going to be questions about security. You know what I'm saying? But I can tell you in the 6 years of my case gone on, not one judge has asked a question about security procedures or protocols.
At the hotel, you mean?
Yeah. So I want to go back just to
So they're
the
protecting the hotel. I mean, look, that's the way Vegas
well,
runs. I bet you probably
well,
can't get appointed as a judge if you're not politically connected to somebody in the higher, corporate structure of these hotels. They run everything.
well, that's the problem that I have with what's going on in Las Vegas now, because this goes far beyond the pale of what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, and we all know that there's some shady shit that goes on in Vegas, and people look the other way. But we're talking the deaths of 60 people, 800 plus shot, wounded, lives forever changed, and yeah, and that's what I'm telling you. This boils down to basic stuff: liability. When MGM, based on what I'm telling you, could have been bankrupted. They're the state's largest employer. Now you got other people that are involved for their own personal reasons, but it's like that George Carlton. You ever watch his skit where he's like, they're all part of the club and you're not
Big
in
club
it?
and you're not in it. Yeah, George Carlin.
Well, he goes beyond that, and he's like, these people all hang out at the same country club. You don't need a formal conspiracy because they all know what's good for them, right?
Well, okay, so
You know,
I think we agree on that. But so you're involved in this mass tort. You don't like the way it's going. It sounds like the lawyers are probably also,
well,
whether overtly or just subliminally, they recognize you can't be a very successful lawyer in Las Vegas if all the casinos hate you. So if you're seen as like, hey, thanks for handling that whole thing with the 800 plaintiffs for us, it seems like the lawyers might be motivated to work against the victims or to mitigate the payout in some way. So at what point do you break with the mass tort and start your own case? And what are the details of your case? And what are the problems that you've run into? Why hasn't the case been resolved yet?
well, I'm going to give you, like I said, I've just only scratched the surface on what I know and can prove and back up. And like I said, I'll back it up with documents all along the way. But the reason that I opted out, not only did I have video, and I went to my lawyers with it, and none of the lawyers came to me to ask a damn question about it. I thought that was very odd, especially when you're talking liability. 16 minutes is a big deal. A lot of lives could have been saved. I
You
also
had
want to mention that
16
Jesus
minutes of
Camp,
video that people haven't seen.
yeah,
Oh,
it's
you
been
should
on
have sent me
YouTube
that.
since about 3 weeks. I will send you the link directly.
Oh, yeah.
If you Google my name on YouTube, 949 First Shots, Las Vegas. There's two videos from me. One's
I'm
condensed to
sure
about
we've
30
seen
seconds.
it. I'm sure Cullen has seen it because your name is
Oh,
definitely
I guarantee
familiar.
I we've debated it because they were trying to tell me, oh, it's not the right room and all this. I can explain and I can break it down for you why they're wrong. For one, I stood next to my girlfriend as she filmed it. She didn't know she had the video. I sent it to the FBI and then I posted it online immediately, and I took copies and put them in other places in case they came to take it so it wouldn't disappear. Um, but I want you to know that Jesus Campos was also not a licensed security guard.
Yeah.
When he
I mean,
went up
that's
to
not
that
surprising.
bracketed, when he walked up to that bracketed door, he didn't
Yeah.
know what was on the other side of it. Right? He went up 2 flights of stairs, down the hall, 4 minutes down the hall, down the elevator, 4 minutes back down the hall, finds the emergency exit door bracketed. He calls it in. Nearly 10 minutes went by. Now, I've asked for evidence in my case on his qualifications, his training, CPR, AED. Because you don't know he wouldn't know if somebody had collapsed, having a heart attack on the other side of the door. You know what I'm saying? From that perspective, you
Yeah.
don't know what's on the other side of the door. He didn't call it in. He took a 10-minute detour because, he's on his way home scot-free after his shift's over.
Right.
Then he calls it in and he walks, instead of knocking on the door at 10 o'clock at night, hearing rapid drilling sounds, according to him, he didn't go knock on the door. He walked the hell away and took a quote unquote ricochet, which I think is a bit embellished.
Well, there's a lot of questions about Jesus Campos for
Well,
sure.
yeah, I mean, supposedly they gave him two condos, and probably paid him out under workers' comp. But he only did one interview for Ellen, and
Right.
that was pretty much a rigged deal. And he walked
Weird.
in with a
Yeah.
cane, playing it up. But he
Yeah.
did, you get shot in the leg, and you don't go immediately to the local hospital. You don't go to any urgent care or anything like that. You go to Mexico, and you get checked out in Mexico.
Huh?
Like,
I
if
know.
you got, come on, like, that's
I
bullshit.
went to his
Everybody
house.
knows.
I don't know if you remember those videos. I went to his house, and that guy
Yeah,
Troy, somebody was there. I got to find that video with Troy at
I
Jesus. It was
recall
called like "What Would Jesus Do?" Is what I think I named
it. Yeah.
the video. But so wait a minute. So your lawsuit. What is the focus of your lawsuit? And I mean, how will it ever be resolved? I think we all agree the courts, they're stacked against you.
So let me tell you why. Well, besides the video, I had over $58,000 in medical. I ended up being hospitalized later on, severe PTSD,
Were you
traumatized.
shot at all? Were you injured
No,
during the
I was.
shooting?
I went back into the gunfire like 6 different times, and
Whoa.
two of the girls I helped ended up dying. The last two victims are two girls that I helped save that night, and it's on police body cam. I can point that out to you. But Sam Marjune and the other lady, I believe she was a
So
quadriplegic
you
for the
were
last
running
year of her
around
life.
getting people out of the line of fire because you're
I
military
got
training.
I got my girlfriend out, hid her behind a hot dog cart behind the Connex boxes, told her not to go out the main gate because I was looking for backpacks. I didn't know if this was terrorism, if this was going to be a bomb outside. So I went back in and started yanking people out, made trips in and out. Um, I made some promises to people. I watched a young man that was an Army veteran, and I promised his mom that I would be the last guy standing there. I wasn't going to let this go. But I ended up being hospitalized later on. There's a bit more to it, but I had over $58,000 in medical costs. I was suicidal at the time. There was a whole bunch of shit that came from this whole situation beyond just of what happened that night. I mean, I've had letters left at my doorstep threatening, all kinds of crap that's gone on behind the scenes. But I had over $58,000 in medical, and I told my lawyer at the time, before I dropped out of the settlement, I was like, you haven't collected my medical records. He swore up and down he would. And then all of a sudden, the deal was if you had no medical treatment, the most you could get was $5,000. Most of the money went to the shooting and death cases, the bigger cases, rightfully so. But there was a much smaller pot for, people that were just there and traumatized. But PTSD is a serious matter that can come out years later. It affects people for a long damn time.
Well, particularly you've been to war. I imagine you might have PTSD from that as
Right,
well.
right. And I did. And like I said, I had been out of therapy for more than 2 years at this point and had, I didn't like big crowds, but I go to this concert, everything's great. Then holy hell breaks loose and it's like I'm back in war again. So yeah, I had to go back into therapy. A whole bunch of crap went on, right? But my lawyer sent me a written offer for $14,000. And I said, hold on. I said, are you shitting me? And I was like, I have over
Seems low.
$58,000. Yeah, I said, I have over $58,000 that's documented by the VA, a federal government agency. You know what I'm saying? Like, this isn't some trumped up bill from some private doctor. This is from the federal government, to reimburse for the money that they spent because of this matter affecting me, right?
Yeah.
And so I fired the lawyer. Then all of a sudden he comes back to me. I had already gone to my therapist. I said, well, I had given him an authorization that lasts up to a year, right? I give him a HIPAA authorization for him to get my records. Well, he calls me on a Friday and he's like, I tell him I'm firing him. He's like, let's talk Monday. He's going to bring back the big steering committee of the top 5 law firms and they're going to represent me, right? And at that point, I didn't trust any of them. And so as soon as I hang up with my lawyer, I find out that he called my therapist and they tried to obtain my records. Well, she
Wow.
denied.
Isn't that
She denied
totally HIPAA illegal? They
malpractice.
can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, she did not give it to him because the authorization was already outdated. And I already told her because it only lasts for a year. I said, well, he had a year to obtain the records. I told him he didn't. He acknowledged it in emails. And then he made me an offer that's not even close to adequate
So they're
for my
trying to get rid of
damages.
you. By the way, Roger, one
Yeah.
other thing, this news article was like, oh, his lawsuit alleges, but this is UNLV. The guy now is a professor at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and his own CV admits that he was the vice president of security at Mandalay Bay and also working for the FBI. So what do they mean allege? He's there admitting it.
Well, there's a lot of alleging, a lot of things that I've said that
Oh my
are
God.
facts.
This guy managed the organized crime and drug units in Las Vegas for the
Yeah,
FBI.
yeah,
Holy
yeah.
cow. Holy
Yes, he did.
cow.
And he had a hand in some mob cases of taking some people down. So, you know,
Wow.
yeah, I found that very interesting. But I knew a
Wait,
lot of
wait.
this before.
This guy must have been involved. Remember that? What was it? The Sands. That whole thing that the movie Casino was based on was real. That was about the Sands Hotel skimming money, and it was like the biggest FBI mafia case ever, I think, taking out the mafia, right?
To be honest with you, my memory is not fresh enough on his
Dude, this
background.
guy
I do
is, you could
recall.
do a whole
I
series of shows just on this dude.
well, you want to know what's funny? Beyond that, Judge Tagliati and Judge Bell also teach ethics classes at
Oh,
UNLV,
oh,
or did.
wow.
Yeah. Judge Tagliati now sits on the gaming commission as the chair. You know, I mean, it's a big circle jerk. That's what I have a problem with.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to be ADD on you, but a million questions are coming to mind. So you're not on board with any of Cullen's stuff about Saudi helicopters? Is that what I understand? You think it was Stephen Paddock shooting out of the room?
Uh, I would say at 110% that it was Stephen Paddock, based on the motives that I know. Two, I was in the crowd running back in. I was counting gunfire. I knew he had more than 30 round mags because I was counting. So I knew he either had a drum or he had an extended freaking mag because there were more than 30 rounds, and I'd run back in while he was switching weapons and reloading. But not only that, I mean, think about this. Everybody gets into the weeds of, oh, the helicopters were shooting at us. That's bullshit. For
What?
one, and Money Machine, we had a sound analysis, a professional come in. There was no overlapping gunfire. So if there's more than one shooter during shooting into the crowd, there was no overlapping gunfire. I'm not saying that somebody didn't pop off rounds somewhere in Las Vegas after the shooting stopped and after Paddock had killed himself, because there was some gunfire that I recognized in videos later on, but that was not from in the concert venue. That
But
was not during the shooting.
what about all the downward angles? The autopsies showed that some
So,
people got shot almost
so
directly down.
people got lazy. The coroner got lazy. The sheriffs got lazy. I mean, I've seen reports where they didn't do the ballistics and all this. Well, if they already know who the guy is, they've already expended a bunch of damn money on this case and damage and tourism getting shut down. This is all about the money. Let me stress that's what this is about. This is about protecting the money in Las Vegas and the tourism. That's what they do. That's why you have suicides that never go reported, where somebody jumped out a damn window or off a balcony. It happens. It still happens. And it's not being reported because of the image and view of Las Vegas being a tourist destination. Well, I hate to tell Nevada, they're not the only tourist destination that relies on tourism in the country. In fact, my hometown, Orlando, is dealing with a similar problem that we're dealing with in this case, where Pulse nightclub shooting, where Omar Mateen shot up the nightclub and killed 48 people or whatever. There were some cover-ups there, and the fact of liability and blocking of the entrances, and the cops not going in directly. Same thing with Las Vegas. They made it sound like LVMPD went right away and they kicked in his door and he was already dead. They didn't breach his room for over an hour later.
Well, okay.
After he was killed.
Let's focus back on your case for a second.
Yeah.
So what is going on with your case? What is unique about your case, and how will it be resolved, do you think?
All right. So I've spent the last 6 years in court. I sued them for negligence. I sued them for basically bad faith, settlement, fraud. I'm saying this is insurance fraud, and basically intentional infliction of emotional distress. Now, three of them were thrown out.
Are you pro se, or you have a lawyer?
Yeah, I've been representing myself against 4 lawyers for the last 6 years on my own. Mm-hmm. So if I was full of shit, you think I'd last this long in court? You know what I'm saying?
No, it's difficult to do.
Kind of very difficult, and it's been hell on me. I'll tell you that, and my family. But essentially, they got rid of 3 of the things because, one, I said it was a fraudulent settlement, and they said, well, I didn't have standing because I opted out of the settlement. I'm trying to undo the settlement for everybody because they got ripped off.
But you can't represent everybody because you're pro se.
No, but my evidence is going to show. Well, So I took business law early on back in the day, and the one thing that I remembered when you're being withheld pertinent information and you're operating in bad faith and you're not telling people key facts and details to make an informed decision,
Uh-huh.
that's a breach and it's null and void for bad faith conduct.
Fraud,
So no,
void
well,
ab
yeah,
initio is what you're trying to say.
but yeah, you think if the public and the families knew that, well, MGM has a pattern, MGM has had a prior mass shooting on their properties. MGM has had more shootings on their properties since this, including people during
Really?
my case that got killed. Yeah, MGM Mirage, 3 people got shot, 2 got killed during my case. New Year's Eve morning, 2024, a guy shot 71 rounds from his balcony of an MGM property downtown Las Vegas. Uh, on the East Coast at the property, a guy got shot with an AR-15, a guy named Nathaniel Nagby, after he got robbed in his hotel room and shot with an AR-15 after Vegas. So there's been numerous incidents, and they still haven't fixed their security. Now, you go to a casino here in California, they got weapons detection systems at their entrances, but MGM refuses to do that.
Why would they refuse that? That doesn't make you'd think that'd be the first thing they would do after this Stephen Paddock deal.
It would be a great question to ask, but I'll tell you this, there's a lot of money that goes around in cost-cutting savings and bonuses at the end of the year for the CEOs and senior executives, millions, in fact, but they apparently can't afford metal detection 24/7. Was funny because during COVID, they had infrared detectors and they were screening people 24/7 during that. So I'll let them answer as to why they haven't done it and more people have died on their property since. But basically,
So you gave me all these documents. I presume these are documents from your case. Do we want to look at these? What are these documents you have here?
sure. One of them is the festival permit. Now, you remember when Tucker Carlson was trying to do his interview in front of Mandalay Bay and he got shut down?
Yeah. He spoke
Remember
about
that?
that in the interview. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because on Fox News's board and on Mandalay Bay's board sat Roland Hernandez. He
Who's
sits on
that?
both boards. He was on the board member for both Fox News Corp and Mandalay Bay. And when you're getting bad press for Mandalay Bay, and then he got, they got the sheriff to basically shut them down because they didn't want nobody asking questions. But prior to that, he had on a lawyer that was involved in our case, Catherine Lombardo, no relation to Joe Lombardo. He also had on Doug Papa, a private investigator, former police officer that did great work during this. That also exposed that the FBI and LVMPD, including one of MGM's senior executives, Tom Lozich, was at the Sahara when they did a training exercise where they shot a mannequin from a helicopter into the hotel room, simulating a similar style attack. But mind you, they told you that this has never happened before. It's unforeseeable. Now, what I'm telling you is because I sued under negligence. Innkeeper's law is what I'm suing for. Innkeeper's law, if you've had similar acts or you're negligent and you cause somebody harm, it's foreseeable. Acts like allowing Stephen Paddock to use Mary Lou Danley's gaming card on the gaming floor, using her card to check into using it for VIP for parking the car, using it for room service, using it eventually after he had already had his own hotel room for a week, that he got a secondary room under her name.
What
That's how he
happened
got
to that
secondary.
Mary Lou Danley? So
She
much
was,
of this case has been not actually fully investigated at all.
yeah, there's a lot, and I would tell I could tell you why it hasn't been investigated, and
Why?
I can tell you, well, the cops wanted to go away to protect the city. You got the former sheriff, now governor. You got the number 2, now sheriff. When you have the A team, the best homicide team, quote unquote, in the country, and then all of a sudden they kick in the door to Paddock's room and they have a negligent discharge. And then all of a sudden, well, now it's no longer the A team investigating. You have the B team, the fit investigation team, come in. And guess who's appointed to lead it? Well, if you want something to go away, the number 2's wife is leading it. So she's leading the team, right? So they're keeping it all in-house in circle. Now her husband is the sheriff. I caught MGM giving him 50 grand. I caught them giving Sheriff Lombardo 310 grand. And here's the thing. You're allowed to give up to 10 grand max for these campaign donations if you're independent. Well, I caught MGM donating 10,000 maxed out from 31 different entities, but here's where they fucked up. They all used the same PO box and did it on the same dates. That makes it illegal. They gave 50 grand to the current sheriff.
You know a lot about this. You've really done a ton of investigation.
Well, like I said, I was trained to do certain things, and they pissed off the wrong guy. And what really pissed me off is the fact that when they sued the victims, they were trying to get out of it. Yeah, it was a technicality, whatever. It was a legal move. But they also sued the young kids whose parents died that night. And I have a problem.
Who sued the kids?
Oh, MGM. They sued kids. They sued the victims.
Why did they sue the victims?
Well, they were trying to preempt it and get it into federal court so they could not be held liable at all and have the DH Safety Act protect them. And then everybody would get jack shit, right? So they were trying to, it was a preemptive legal move, but it was a lowball move. There was an outcry, and then everybody boycotted MGM for a period of time, right? But had I died that night, going back in to do the right thing to try and help people, they could have been suing my 6-year-old daughter or ripping her off to get no money after I died. And I have a problem with what they did, not only just because of that, but because of the fact that veterans died that night, including a police officer that was an Army veteran. Now, how do you honor, for me, it's dishonor. You dishonored a veteran by lying and covering this up. A police officer, a veteran, another veteran that died that night. And I promised his mom, I was like, I'm going to be the last man standing because, in the Marine Corps, we're kind of taught you leave no man behind. And I might not have been able to save them that night, but I'm not letting them get away with this. And so I've used every ounce of my fiber and being for the last 8+ years to uncover what was really going on. And you know what? A good investigator will always tell you, you ain't even got to be a cop to know this, but always follow the money, right? Follow the money, especially in Vegas. Furthermore,
wait a second. You've seen these John Cullen videos, right? You don't think he presented compelling evidence that there were helicopters flying around?
Oh, of course there were helicopters flying around.
But without transponders, and they were,
I mean, there's a lot of different reasons for that, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend to blow smoke up your ass and I know every reason. But I can tell you for 100% that there was no helicopter shooting at me in that venue. And I went in 6 times. I'm telling you that was incorrect. It wasn't the Saudi prince, a whole bunch of bullshit there. It was a security guy from one of the casinos.
Well, no. We know that guy walking through the Tropicana was not the Saudi prince. I've speculated that he looks so much like the Saudi prince. You put him in a Candora and sunglasses and boom, there you go. You have your body double. We know they commonly use body doubles when they Julianed Jamal Khashoggi leaving the Saudi embassy in Istanbul, Turkey. Somebody dressed up in his same clothes, same body type,
they got looking like
left.
Double. Yeah.
Right. So I'm just saying it's Cullen. Look, I got my issues with Cullen. Everybody knows about that now. But on Vegas, he seemed to have so much solid evidence. So what do you?
Let me give you the very fucking simple answer. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cuss, but
that's fine. You say whatever you want.
I'm very passionate about this, and let me break it down to you for common sense, because we seem to elude common sense in this case too often. There's so much propaganda and misinformation surrounding it. Let me tell you this. Okay, if the Saudi prince was up at the
Four Seasons.
The upper floor, the Four Seasons hotel. Well, if they were shooting out of the Four Seasons, first of all, the windows are fixed. That's not
the claim. First of all, another mistake that Ian and Tucker had in their interview was Tucker asked Ian, did anything happen in the Four Seasons in the area above where Paddock was, and Ian said either no or he didn't know. That's wrong. Cullen had video footage of what looked like a shotgun blast coming out of the window just before Paddock started shooting at all.
Like I said, the windows are fixed. They don't open at Mandalay Bay, even at the Four Seasons.
But you could shoot them.
Yeah, but we have daylight video of the building the next day. There's only 2 windows blown out, 32-134 and 32-135. They couldn't fix the glass and replace it overnight. Not that damn quick.
Why not? It's
Vegas. They did it in the middle of the night in front of everybody? I mean,
I don't know.
All eyes were on Mandalay Bay at that point. You know what I'm saying? Like, but let me go back even further.
Window. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, we would need Cullen to argue all this stuff, but obviously he's gone, and I'm not interested in bringing him back. It's an amazing mystery, Roger. But sorry, let me take you back to the main question. Your case. What is happening? What do you project to happen? I mean, it's a long time. Right. I've been in court for a long time too.
So let me, and this is very important because I asked Judge Linda Bell, because she's best friends with Jennifer Tagliati, the judge who's protecting your dad. In fact, Jennifer Tagliati had something to do with, as a judge and friend, they're best friends. They hang out at each other's house. Their kids play together. But she had something to do with Judge Bell's adoption story of her child. So I asked her to recuse in my case because of the conflict of interest with their friendship. She refused. So basically, negligence has 4 elements: a duty, a breach, causation, and damages. Well, I had already proven all of them. And so all they needed was damages. Now, Judge Linda Bell denied me giving her my medical records, right? So then she gave me explicit instructions that she was going to court order my records and she would obtain them. Now, the night before she ruled against me, Robert Eglett, our top lawyer who made reportedly around $100 million without going to trial, threw her a big fundraiser dinner. The night before she ruled against me, she announced she was running for the Supreme Court of Nevada. They raised nearly $300,000 for her. She ran unopposed. Not only that, she violated the law because she was not allowed to pre-solicit donations before January 15th. But I found out the catering was booked for her events on like January 3rd, because I contacted the caterer. I talked to him. I got all the details. So that was illegal. Eglett not only gave her 10 grand, but he fucked up and he gave her $2,500 in-kind campaign contribution dinner, which is supposed to be taken out of the max 10 grand. It wasn't. It makes it a willful violation because she only had like 30 days, I think, to return the money, 90 days.
Are these things that you've been able to prove in court? Or these are your allegations? Oh, yeah. It's important that we...
No. I brought the records and the financial records into my court case. Now, let me tell you why. So the judge court ordered my military medical records, created a court order for it. Then she was supposed to get my complete military and medical record. MGM and their motion for summary judgment admitted that Mandalay Bay 1 was an innkeeper. Judge Bell, in her decision, ruled that Mandalay Bay was an innkeeper under Nevada law twice. MGM asserted my DD-214 that I gave them to her under seal. Judge Bell only requested my DD-214 twice and she was denied. She had to go to Headquarters Marine Corps to get it. She didn't go. She put nothing in the record to tell me. She never even ordered my medical records and then ruled against me for lack of medical records, saying I couldn't prove damages.
See, this is pretty standard judge stuff. They have a lot of latitude to sort of do whatever the hell they want. And then it's like, look, F you, do something. Your time to appeal is up. This is what you're describing the types of things that I've run into as well, where it's like, the time for appeal is up and you failed to perfect your appeal. And so bye-bye. It basically sounds like that's what they're doing to you.
Yes. And so right now, so fraud has a 4-year statute of limitations, and I'm coming up on that to sue Judge Bell, and I don't want to sue her. I don't
You're not
even
going to be able to
sue
sue a judge, though, for something that they did in the course of their judging.
Yes, you can, because it's when you're committing fraud, that is outside of the scope of their duties, and their judicial immunity can be breached.
Run into some problems.
It's a tough battle, but based on the circumstances of this case and the evidence that I have, documented evidence. So let me tell you what happened in my case. So I kind of screwed up. I'm not a lawyer. I've been doing all this on my own the entire time. And so when she ruled against me, I filed an appeal immediately. I thought I was going to be able to go to the appellate court and present them my medical records and say, this is bullshit. Well, I get there. It takes months, it takes 6 months before I even get in front of them, a couple more months longer than that. By the time I get in front of them, they're like, no, let me tell you this. So I had a bill in the record already from the VA for $58,000. It says in that billing ledger, PTSD, this, that. They just didn't have the details of the doctor's notes, my therapist's notes, right? That's what they were looking for. Well, I'm going, well, you've got probable cause to believe there's medical records because you got a bill from the federal government. Well, that's what they were like, no, we're ruling in favor because there's no records there. So then I went to the Supreme Court. Eventually, I went back down to the district court. The only way I can introduce new evidence or that evidence is being in the district court. The other courts won't look at it. So as soon as I get down to the lower court, I'm in front of a new judge because Judge Bell is now a Supreme Court justice. It's Judge Weiss. I get before him and I said, Your Honor, we're going back and forth. And I said, Your Honor, who ordered my records? And I was like, please reorder my records. He refused to. So then I went through and found out what was done. I got evidence of what she ordered and what she didn't. And I went back to the court and I dropped it in the record. Then I went to him and MGM, now, like I said, in their summary judgment request, they had already admitted that Mandalay Bay was an innkeeper. Judge Bell in her decision had already admitted twice.
Why is that significant? I mean, isn't it obvious? They run a hotel.
Well, because then they later told the other judge that no MGM entity that I sued is an innkeeper under Nevada law. So now you're deliberately misrepresenting facts to a new judge. He's already told the court he would rule against me, but he didn't even look at the damn evidence. I was like, you now have my medical records. I've proven every element of damages. So right now, where it's at, I went back to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court reviewed my case for the last 5 months, and then they passed it back down to the appellate court. They're the ones that kind of made the final ruling. The Supreme Court just asserted it. I wanted the Supreme Court to keep it because she's a Supreme Court justice and because lower level courts tend to not want to go against the Supreme Court justice, a senior judge. Not only that, so basically, under innkeeper's law, the definition of premises, because they had that partnership, expands the premises to the festival grounds. So that means if you think MGM didn't want to pay out anybody, they wouldn't have paid out all those other people either, to be honest with you, because they were all on the same property as I was. And I was making the argument, I was like, well, if a telephone pole fell over and hit me across the street, I couldn't recover damages because I'm not on the same property as Mandalay Bay. Like, that's bullshit. And so we were going round and round about that. But then I exposed that document where they were concealing from the court their partnership that would expand the premises. And under innkeeper's law, they have direct liability. Foreseeability is a major factor because MGM, they would not give me the documents of the statements that they made to the insurance company. They ended up suing Zurich in a separate case to try and recover money for their lawyers additional and for some
Roger,
of the special.
I hate to interrupt you, but this is dense material for people to understand. I know you're years into it, but let me bring you back down to earth for a second. People want to know why you believe Paddock had all those guns. If he wanted revenge to kill people because of his slip and fall, why not just get 1 or 2 guns and shoot up everybody? Why do you need all those guns?
Honestly,
you don't really know.
Nobody will know that answer other than the fact he wanted to leave them liable. He wanted to leave them liable. He wanted to bankrupt these people.
I don't know.
A shooting of that level would.
Yeah.
But you got to think. So Deutsche Bank sold the hotel to Blackstone. Blackstone renovates, and then they sold it to MGM. MGM was going to run it. They needed this lawsuit to go away. MGM has a lot of pull with the judges. They need this case to go away. It goes away, which is exactly what happened. Like the song says, it was the only way I know, leaving them liable. Yeah. Was he batshit crazy for killing a bunch of people to prove his point? Yes, but so was the Unabomber.
Doesn't mean we should also add this. Of course, this is your speculation based on your personal experience and your view of the evidence.
it's not just that. It's so uh, the
Well, let's do
song.
this, Roger. Let's do this because it's a lot of material for people to.
Right.
I think the details of your lawsuit are perhaps difficult for people to grasp, but I do want to make sure that everybody knows they can follow you on X, and of course, you got your DMs open there. That's how you and I got
Right.
into communication, and certainly people are interested in learning more about your case, and we're going to see updates. Right? You're going to update X as things happen
Right.
in the case.
So I want to just stress this point real quick. My
Sure.
case is at the final stage right now. I'm
Mhm.
awaiting a ruling any day now, any month now. The court's
Wow.
had it for about a month and a half. Right now, the big question is: are the judges going to protect their fellow lawyers and judges? Because
Obviously, yes.
you're talking malpractice on all of the victims. You're talking fraud upon the insurance company. Talking judicial misconduct. Now, where my case is at, I basically filed a motion 60. Motion 60 is a relief from judgment based on the evidence that basically was sabotaged. Now, a motion 60B, you only have a year. There's certain uh, mistake, fraud, inadvertence, all these different things that they could overturn the case, right? Well, under a 60B, you only have 1 year to do that. Because I was outside of the year, I had to file a motion 60. I'm requesting a 60D, which is straight fraud, but it's much harder to prove fraud over mistake, inadvertence, all that stuff. But what I'm saying is there's a pattern of conduct in this case. There's a pattern of failures, deliberate attempts to sabotage my records, deliberate attempts to not inform me of what you even requested. You're accepting money. I caught 3 or 4 different judges in my case accepting money from Robert Eglett during my case. None of it was ever disclosed. I caught MGM paying out a bunch of key people that was never disclosed. And let me touch on this real quick. You remember when MGM, there was an outcry because I raised holy hell about it. MGM had talks with the sheriff about turning the festival grounds into a SWAT facility.
Yeah,
Do you
remember
recall
that.
that?
But they didn't do it, I
Well,
don't think.
oh, so what they did, because that would look like straight bribery during their investigation, right? So what they did is about 2 years later, they opened the LVMPD Reality Training Center, a property that they already had in the county. But guess who's there? The CEO of MGM, the sheriff, and the governor, Lombardo. They name it kind of after Joe Lombardo. And when did they do it? On October 1st, the anniversary.
Wow.
And then Joe Lombardo turns around and says, well, this had nothing to do with the shooting. Well, why would you have to make that statement? MGM donated a bunch of money along with some other people for that facility. The, why has the FBI and the LVMPD never interviewed me in 8 years? Yet I'm on police body cam going back in. They know I was there. They know I'm in a lawsuit. And the damn sheriff currently follows me. Governor Lombardo blocked
Follows
me
you
even
on
from
X? Oh
oh,
yeah,
on
he
X.
showed me he
Yep.
has some kind of secret account or something.
Well, instead of
Some list.
directly following me, so it shows up as a follower, he created a special list titled it "Interested," so he could see every one of my posts every morning.
Wow. But
So
this is just a
he
parking lot now across the street.
Yeah, so they sold off most of the grounds to an Indian tribe from North Dakota, and then they left a small sliver in the far corner, furthest away from Mandalay Bay, to be the memorial. And then they're building the stadium, I believe, adjacent to that for the A's stadium. But yeah, MGM lied to their insurance company. I caught them because, like I said, they wouldn't give me the documents and statements of what they told to the insurance company. But when they filed the lawsuit in federal court to get more money, they made a statement under general factual allegations saying that this event was unforeseeable. Now, with foreseeability, if it's foreseeable and preventable and you're indifferent to security, meaning that you've had other incidents and that you should have been guarding your entrances, which MGM even admitted in my case that, if you didn't get through the front door, you can't shoot from the tower. Had they been guarding against weapons, even knives, he would have never gotten through the door with all that baggage. He went in and out of there for a week with drills, guns, ammo, all that. And he was never stopped and checked, not once. So if it was foreseeable and preventable, then insurance doesn't cover it. So now you've lied to the insurance company to gain coverage. So 751
Well, I
out
don't
of the
know if
800
they're.
million.
Let's be careful what we say about lying, because I don't want to get sued by these guys. Maybe they
Well,
just have a different
I've got
point
the
of
court
view.
record. I've got the
Didn't
court
they
record. It's in my
explode the Tropicana? Is the Tropicana still there? I thought they
no,
demolished it.
they demolished it. They demolished it. I ran through the Tropicana that night looking for my girlfriend back to Caesars, or back into Excalibur where we were staying. Back out. I went back and forth to that venue multiple times. It was horrible. It was horrible, and unfortunately, I wanted us all to stick together and say no to the settlement. First of all, my mom works for the freaking insurance company. She's been there for nearly
Your
40 years.
mom works for the insurance company?
Yeah, she's been there for nearly 40 years. Like I said, I had a friend shot in a mass shooting on their property before, and even though it wasn't the same property, it was 2 miles away. What do you mean you didn't know a mass shooting could happen?
Well, I mean,
I
but I don't know. We'd have to get into the details of what a legal definition of foreseeable is. I mean, obviously, anything could happen. I mean, a plane
I've already
could
done all
crash
that work
into
for
it,
you.
but I don't know if that really counts as foreseeable.
Well,
listen,
that
Roger,
would be
I think it's a deep subject and an interesting topic, and you've got a really unique perspective on it. People can follow you on X at Kenis81. Anything you want to say in the last moments here before we wrap up tonight? And we can talk more in the future, of course.
Sure. I'll tell you this. MGM already offered me money. I told them no more than once. I've got the email to prove it. I'm not doing this. This isn't just about my damages. Yeah, what's happened in my life from this? My girlfriend that said I saved her life that night turned around, tried to have me put in jail because she didn't want to testify.
Whoa.
And because we were having personal issues. She turned around, married one of my close friends. I've had a lot of shit that's gone on from this case. Beyond it, but beyond my damages, I'm a small fry. $58,000 in medical bills. That ain't shit. The money is in the 4,400 people that they cheated. I'm trying to get the settlement undone, and that's what they don't like. Because did they tell all these families that that the window was shot out 16 minutes before? Did they tell the family about what Paddock's motive might have actually might have been, and that he bought guns on the dates of the anniversaries and committed to act on the anniversary of the final ruling of his court case, and then left fake flowers, clues, pointed out that he booked the hotel at the same name of the hotel that was being bought out by Blackstone. These are more than just coincidences. And MGM has not disputed. The only thing they disputed about my video, they said, well, that's not what's in the police report. Well, I asked them to produce video. They've not produced any video. They not only did that, they didn't produce any of the records that I request, which corporations are required to do. And then when they answered the interrogatories under oath, they didn't have the senior officer is required to sign their name along with their lawyer for any objections. They didn't have him sign it for plausible deniability reasons. They don't want any of this in the record, but I put it all in the record now. So the court's going to have to decide whether they're going to follow the law or they're going to protect their friends. But I've given them ample enough, every piece of evidence that they've either ruled against me for in the past, I've provided them. They have every piece of it now, and they have everything that they need to know. And it's whether or not they're going to try this time issue, time borrowing beyond fraud. But that's nonsense. They know it's fraud. You had judges involved in it. You have lawyers involved in it. You had the sheriff never interviewing me in 8 years. What kind of investigation doesn't interview a victim that was there saying he's got credible video that went to the FBI? I mean, I filed complaints everywhere, and I've never been interviewed. Why is that?
It's difficult to say, Roger, but it's a crazy story. That everything to do with Vegas is just still so unanswered. But I want to thank you for coming on the show. I want to remind everybody they can follow you on X at Kenis81. They can follow me on X at JG_CSTT, and people can sponsor Crowdsource the Truth on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com or subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsource the truth. Roger, thanks for your insights tonight. Good luck with the case, and come back when the case is complete. We'll speak to you again, okay?
I appreciate you having me on, and I'm hoping that maybe some of these other people will start looking into what I've said, because I'll back it up with documents. My case has the evidence. It's all there. You just got to go through it, unfortunately. And I'd love for a lawyer that really wants to fix things in Vegas to come help me undo this deal,
I don't think
because it should be undone.
Lawyers don't work like that, unfortunately.
Well, they all
Good
want
luck
the
to you,
insurance
man.
money.
And thanks
All right.
thanks to everybody for watching. Have a great night.